Welcome back to a brand new episode of the MMA Beat. That was so fun.
I didn't know we were going live.
It is Thursday, May 25th, 2017. What a great way to start.
Sorry, dude. Sorry.
We're back, and all of a sudden you start laughing.
You know what? He threw me off.
Don't dare call this the A-team.
My phone is ringing all kinds. It's New York Rick.
New York Rick.
This is a
Stop
mess.
calling us New York Rick.
This is a mess. We're back. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani inside our New York City studio. I was going to say it's raining outside, but it's sunny inside because the A-team is back. But I think it's more of a mess in here than it is outside. You know that man. He's Luke Thomas. He just ruined the intro of the show. He's of SiriusXM and MMAfighting.com. That is Chuck Mindenhall of MMAfighting.com as well, the man in the hat, and of course, Mr. Reliable himself, Jeff Wagenheim of the Washington Post, a.k.a. the man in the shirt. All right, guys. I can't recall the last time we did a show, four of us, A-team.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's a little tight up here, I must say.
Yes.
But it's good to see you all again. We have so much to discuss. Let us start with the bantamweight and flyweight division this week, because they're kind of merging into each other, at least this week as far as the news is concerned. So, Cody Garbrandt is out of UFC 213.
Huh? How's that possible?
He's making me laugh. Cody Garbrandt is out of UFC 213.
He's got a rapist smile. That's the problem.
This show's off to a roaring
I
start.
know.
Okay.
Oh, this is awesome.
All right.
Let's try.
All right, we're talking about Cody Garbrandt. Get it together, journalist of the year.
We're going to do this better when we go live. Don't get that stuff started, man.
Demetrious Johnson has been offered to fight against TJ Dillashaw.
The magic of live TV.
He says he doesn't want to take the fight.
This is so unprofessional.
I know, you guys made me laugh at the top. I didn't
So Ray
expect it.
Borg's,
Okay.
Ray Borg's the top guy.
Yes.
He's
Demetrious doesn't want to take the fight. You agree with him.
I do.
Many don't agree with you.
Correct.
Why? Why do you agree?
Man, it's a bit of a complicated answer. There's a number of layers to it, which I don't want to get them to all off the top. But basically, as a general rule, for me, not for everyone, just for me, as a general rule, if we're going to jump someone in the queue, either when they go up a division or down, there's got to be a particularly compelling reason to do so. And when I say particularly compelling, I don't mean, wow, is DJ a good fight? I mean, of course. Like, who looks at that on paper and goes, I think that one might suck. No one does that. But that's not a grand moment. That is so far away from Alvarez McGregor, where someone jumped the queue, but 2 titles on the line. First time at Madison Square Garden, MMA had arrived, $20 million nearly gate. Like, that was a big deal. You can override things and potentially create problems as a consequence. It's not a money fight. It's not a super fight. It's just a great fight. Not enough for me to say let's mess up potentially a couple of divisions to get that done.
So it seems like the majority of the fans actually disagree with this take.
Yes.
Do you understand? Okay.
Majority of the hardcore fans. I don't think the
ones on
casual
Twitter,
fans know a
yes.
difference.
I mean, I get it from the aspect of, I think a lot of times with Demetrious Johnson, we're like, well, who's challenging him? Who's doing these things? And so
Right.
it goes back a little further. We're looking for a challenge for Demetrious Johnson. That's kind of the setup that's going on. And right now, Ray Borg, in some people's minds, may just be the next run-of-the-mill opponent that they can throw at him. You know what I'm saying? And it's unfair. I mean, the guy's 23 years old. He's come up very fast. He's been very good in his last couple of fights. He keeps getting better. I would like to see the fight, but I get the idea. When you have a guy like Dillashaw who's on a vehicle right now on tough, and they got his face out there, he's supposed to have this fight coming up. There's all this context that he's going to be in a title fight. He is a former title holder. And you're like, we can't put this fight, but we can redirect him against the guy who needs the challenge. I can see how psychologically that makes sense.
From the UFC's perspective.
Yeah, from the UFC's perspective, and for certain fans who basically are like, well, you know, that would be a challenge for him because he's coming from a different way, and he's had his moment as champion in the UFC and all this stuff. So I can see it from that sport, but to be completely honest, I would be happy with either fight. When I look at both guys, I'm like, it's like Demetrious Johnson is going to be breaking a record, and whoever it is, it's going to be a big fight in my mind. And really, you can't go wrong because I like Ray Borg. I've liked him as he's come up, and he's gotten better and better. To me, it's intriguing. The one good thing is he's so young. If they did push him to the side right now, maybe it benefits him in the long run to kind of get that. Yeah. He's so young that maybe it benefits him. Yeah, exactly.
The first thing that Luke said is exactly the point that I would zero in on, where you said this is complicated. It's a complicated situation. I did not think there is a simple solution. Oh yeah, of course he should fight TJ, or of course he should fight Borg. There are so many nuances to this. You know, I think Luke brought up the point that 2 weight classes would be impacted severely. I mean, you have a really good bantamweight fight, title fight in the wings here, waiting with 2 guys who have, you know, like heat with each other. That thing could go away depending on what happens here. But on the other side of it, you know, Dillashaw has never fought at 125 pounds, so we don't know what version of Dillashaw would even show up. And if he wins the belt, is he going to stay there, or do you just like now he abandons and the 125 division is, you know, it's all meant everybody for themselves. But again, on the other side of that, Borg, his last 4 fights, he's missed weight twice. And he's won 2 in a row, only one of them is against a top 10 opponent. So to say that he's being robbed of a title shot, I think would be a little bit disingenuous. But, you know, I think you could, but he is the next guy in line if you're not going to give another shot to Cejudo or to Benavidez or, you know, one of those guys, and plus Benavidez being injured, he's not really in the running. So it's a really complicated thing. And what I guess what I would come down to is in the end is, here's DJ. He's not looking for the money fight. He's looking for the next guy in succession. And here's the UFC, which has these 2 weight classes that it should be preserving. That's kind of the charge of the UFC. And they're the ones that are willing to, like, wreck the bantamweight and the flyweight divisions for the money fight. It's almost like a case of role reversal in a sense.
There's one more factor here I really think is driving a lot of this. Well, number one, TJ got to Twitter and put the Mighty Mouse picture.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a big component. But I really think if you just take a step back and you sort of survey the issue here, if there was a Ronda and Conor fight, let's say, forget Mayweather, and Ronda's still competing, if she was fighting in August and Conor was fighting in September, would anyone be clamoring for this? I don't think so. They never organically clamored for it to begin with. The point being is, it's a down year, and I get it. Believe me, I get it. There are fans out there who are bored. They're bored. They want to see the best fight possible come hell or high water. I just think doing that when it's a lean year and creating a precedent for matchmaking that could create problems down the line is not a good idea unless you have a very, very compelling reason to do so.
What has been one of the big themes of this past year? These divisions being held up because of these money fights, quote unquote, and these champions wanting to fight this guy. And you saw it in the middleweight division. Recently, you saw it in the lightweight division, you saw it in the featherweight division, these divisions that are somewhat in shambles at the top because of matchmaking like this. To me, it's a no-brainer. And I think that we should commend Demetrious Johnson. Here's the one guy who's saying, look, I want to keep things in order. I want to do things the right way. I've seen what's happened in other divisions. Sure, if you're going to pay me $2 million to fight this guy, great. But let's not forget that Demetrious Johnson's next fight, if he wins it, is a record-breaking fight, right? And they're talking about doing this fight in Seattle, which is essentially his hometown. That's a very big deal. If TJ Dillashaw doesn't make weight, it's no longer a title fight. So now he has just prepared for this grand moment in his hometown, and Dillashaw doesn't make weight. And yes, I know that Borg has missed weight 2 out of the last 4 times, but he made weight in his last fight.
Also, he now has that new nutrition group. Yep.
And he's with a new team. He's with Jackson's new management team, all that stuff. I actually really agree with DJ on this one. TJ Dillashaw is not a champion. He's coming down to 125. What if he wins? I can guarantee you that he's not sticking around at 125. What he wants to do is win that belt and then go up to 135 and be the champ, right? And now you're leaving 125 in the same shambles that you've left these other divisions. This has been, the fact that the UFC is even considering this, the fact that they're considering Mayweather-McGregor, the fact that they're considering Bisping GSP goes back to what we talked about last week. You know, big purchase, big loan, they got to do something, they got to get people excited. But let's be honest, how many more pay-per-views does Dillashaw DJ sell over Borg DJ? It just doesn't.
Marginally, even if it was on TV.
What, 50,000 more? 10,000 more?
If Dillashaw, it's this serious question, if Dillashaw Johnson was a Fox main event, would it clear 4 million? No. Would it clear 3? I'm not even sure it would clear 3. Maybe it would. This is not some giant fight. And I know you got a different point on this, but the one thing I want to make about this is, I think very highly of Ray Borg as a fighter. I've been sleeping on him, and I've been dead wrong a number of times. He keeps surprising me how good he's getting, to your point. At 23 years old, that's when these guys just start shocking you with their development. But, like, people have said he's hiding, DJ is hiding from the real challenge, because TJ is the real challenge. And I'm thinking to myself, well, first of all, that's idiotic. But let's take a second and examine that. Is it feasible that Demetrious Johnson is saying to himself, I'm about to break a record, let me take a contender, a real one, versus a guy who could be a more difficult fight who's not a real contender? Yes, he probably is. There's nothing controversial about that at all, at all. It does not mean he's scared in some street fighting sense. It means he's managing his career. The guy has fought enough top talent, I think, to recognize that he probably could beat TJ Dillashaw too. He's just saying, what's the better option to make history?
And it's similar to the Derek Lewis thing in the sense that, he's basically saying, hey, if you want me to do the Dillashaw fight, pay me. You know what I mean? He's saying, like, if that's what you want and that's not really what I want, then let's split down the middle and you make it worth my while. So in some ways, I'm with him 100% actually in how he's presenting himself. All I was pointing out was from a perspective of, the bedrock of what's been going on with Demetrious Johnson is there hasn't been a guy to challenge him. And I think that there's intrigue in that sense. I think that some people right now just view Ray Borg as not ready yet, or just don't really think of him on the radar, whereas they know Dillashaw. So that's the reason that there's like a magnetism to that fight.
And yet there's something a little bit off here. It's originally the talk about Mighty Mouse against a bantamweight was Mighty Mouse perhaps going up and fighting against the champion, and that was there was a little bit of talk about that super fight. That's what it would be. This is not a super fight, as DJ has pointed out. If you're not the champion and you're dropping weight, it's just not a super fight.
People are so confused by that super fight.
But then the other side, if Borg were the clear #1 contender, if he were the guy, if there was no such thing as a Benavidez, or there's no such thing as Sasuda, or if Borg had beaten one of those kind of guys, he really hasn't beaten a guy who is on the verge of contending against DJ. If he were that guy, then this wouldn't be talked about. So I kind of feel like like we talked about in the beginning of this, it's complicated. This is not a trash move by the UFC trying to bring in TJ Dillashaw, but I just don't think it's the right move.
The other thing is Cody Garbrandt, while he can fight on July 8th, is recovering, did go through that treatment in Germany, and they're telling him he needs 4 weeks of PT, and then he could slowly get back into things, so maybe early fall he could come back. You just did The Ultimate Fighter. There's a great rivalry. Let's say he's ready to return in September, October. Why would you have TJ Dillashaw fight someone else and ruin that fight? And now you have a mess. Like, you have this great rivalry at 135, a division that sometimes has been lacking in great rivalries. So why would you ruin that?
Not to mention Dominic Cruz sitting over the
things
top
at
of
135 are really just kind of playing out nicely, and you have something going on at 125. Okay, Borg isn't the biggest name, and people aren't going gaga over him getting a title shot, but then beneath them you have Moreno and Pettis, main event in Mexico City, and maybe if Moreno wins that fight, he's won 4 in a row and he could do something. I just don't like this idea. Short term, obviously. You tell me, right now, who do you want to watch? Dillashaw versus DJ or DJ versus Borg? Of course I'm more interested in Dillashaw. Former champion, we know him. We're more emotionally invested in him. But for like the sanctity of the sport and trying to right this ship to go back to the old days when there were contenders and there was a clear, ladder, steps going up to the champion, this has been a mess. And then I love the hypocrisy of these fans who are saying like, oh, Bisping, you're picking fights. Conor, he screwed up the featherweight division and now he's screwing up the lightweight division. And Woodley, you're trying to fight the middleweight champion. And here's DJ, who's actually trying to do things the right way from a sporting standpoint.
He got some nerve, huh?
And they're crapping on him. And then how about TJ Dillashaw, who got on the mic when he beat John Lineker in December and said, if I don't get a title shot next, this crap is rigged, right? Mm-hmm. And there has to be something to be said for like a guy going in there and just jumping and taking away another man's opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, could you imagine if someone did that at 145 and came down to 135 and beat him to the punch to get to the champion? Like,
I don't expect the individual actors or fans. I understand fans' frustration here. I really do. We're now what? It's May 25th. What's been the big fight this year? Joshua Klitschko. Sorry, it hasn't been anything in MMA. They're bored. They want some kind of thing, and it's hard to tell a fan you need to put your interests on the back burner so we can preserve the greater interests here of how the sport operates. They don't give a damn about that, and I don't expect them to. I do expect the UFC to uphold that. That's, I think, my difference.
But what is the big fight? If the fans want a big fight, what is the big fight? You compared fights. I'll compare 2 different ones. Would fans rather see Dillashaw drop down to 125, a weight that he's never fought at, to fight against the champion, and if he wins, he's not going to stay there? Would you rather have that one, or would you rather have Dillashaw wait another month, maybe another 2 months, and fight against Cody Garbrandt for the belt in his natural weight class, and one that he would sustain. If he were to win that belt, he would stay there and he would reign as a champion. And it's one of those rare fights. We talk about the heat between athletes, and so much of it is kind of fake, and athletes just trying to generate something, just to motivate themselves. This is one where, two guys who used to be teammates, one guy leaves. I mean, it's an actually organic rivalry that's pretty rare in the sport. It really is. I mean, other than when John Jones and Rashad Evans, that's the last time that I can remember one where two guys really directly related to being teammates and no longer being teammates, they generated some kind of heat. And this is one that has that. To me, it's a no-brainer. I want to see Garbrandt and Dillashaw. That's the fight I want to see. The other fight is okay, but that's not the one. I would rather wait for the extra 2 months.
Are you guys surprised that the UFC is putting this public pressure on Demetrious Johnson, that they're thinking so short-term and not thinking about, this big fight coming up, how much they've invested in it, tough, all this stuff, and not seeing the mistakes of the past year and a half in these other divisions? Are you surprised? Because, Dana White is coming out and saying, like, this is the fight that we want to make. And Demetrious is saying, like, no, it's not the fight that's happening. And then he's coming out again and saying, like, this is the fight that we're...
record. I feel like we've had this discussion a lot, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like where UFC is saying something that is not really agreed to yet. It's just sort of a pressure thing. But
Does that surprise you?
It's I mean, I don't know about surprise, not this year.
Okay.
I mean, this is the type of thing, like you see this type of thing, and there's an initial excitement to something like this. They say, oh, Dillashaw, he's not going to get that. Well, that's the silver lining, right? Like, he gets to get Demetrious Johnson, and, this is a quick fix. But you're right. When you actually step back, you realize how inaccessible the sport is becoming from any casual standpoint. When you start to look at all the machinations that are in play and everything that's going on, all the interim titles and everything else, it is very confusing now. And then you start to get... California wants different weight classes and all these other things, and you're just like, it's getting to a point where it's really not accessible to. It's hard to follow if you follow the sport. It's hard to follow if you write about the sport. To keep up with everything that's going on. I just feel like each time we go down one of these rabbit holes, you make 3 new complications, and it's like, at some point you got to just do the most simple thing, especially in this situation where it could be fixed. I mean, like you're saying, Garbrandt could be back sooner rather than later. There's really no reason to mess with it for a short picture gain.
I was just going to say, I feel like UFC, part of me is like, I'm like with Chuck, am I surprised? No, I guess not. Another part of me is I'm a little bit alarmed. Like, I don't know if this is the right way to think, but I wonder does their willingness to do this signal that something is wrong? That their plans, whatever revenue projection or some other guideline for themselves that they had is wildly off and that they are scrambling. I don't know that that's the case. I'm merely theorizing. But if that is the case, that is certainly concerning. But I just think, look, they're dealing with a time where you got people asking Kobe Bryant about unions, and Nate Diaz doesn't want to fight, and Khabib Nurmagomedov misses weight at the 11th hour. And I think that what they're just trying to do is get some momentum going this year. Just do something that gets people excited. And to their credit, that would excite, I think, the hardcore fan base. But it's maybe out with the bathwater.
What does that really mean? I mean, 211 was a tremendous card. By all indications, it didn't, break the bank as far as pay-per-view is concerned. And this is no knock again. The fight is awesome, but when you think of the long-term ramifications, it doesn't make any sense. And at least it kind of surprises me that DJ, who's had some trouble maybe connecting with the fans or becoming a big money fighter, is on the verge of making history. And this is another thing that you can sort of sell him with, right? This is the record-breaking guy. This is the guy who broke the record that no one thought would ever be broken in his hometown. Like, they should be celebrating that. They shouldn't necessarily want to try to stop that. You know what I mean?
The fans?
No, the UFC. Oh. Like, this guy's a model fighter. He's one of 3 fighters that showed up to that, champions that showed up to that retreat. One of 3 champions. And he never, complains about the UFC. He's pretty, he's pretty on point, on brand, so to speak. Like, they should almost be, in my opinion, hoping that he breaks that record, because now you have an active champion who does everything right, who's, a good husband, a good family man, a good Samaritan, who's got this quirky little, interest in video. Like, let him break the record and then go on a media tour and parade him as the greatest athlete in the history of the sport. Do that sort of thing. Don't try to find, some crazy quick fix to come down and maybe beat him and then leave a division that is somewhat in flux and shambles. I mean, I can't wrap my head around it. I really can't. If you had some money fighter, if you had the second coming of Conor at 135 who wanted to fight him, then yeah, it makes sense. You're going to make money off of it. but that card is not going to sell more or less if you go with Borg over Dillashaw, in my opinion. Now, Garbrandt is out, and it's interesting because last week we were talking about, they're still promoting him on 213, and at the exact time he's getting needles stuck in his back. And he continued to say on social media, like, I'm out. He said it on Saturday. And then it took them all the way until, Tuesday to actually say that he was out. Is this dishonest? To be frank, the guy was getting shots in his back, and they're selling tickets with his face on it. Does that not rub you the wrong way a little bit?
I'm not sure what it is. I don't know what their threshold is for some kind of doctor clearing him to ultimately say it. But I have to say, it's at a bare minimum, it is certainly treading the line, right? You got his picture out there, no indication that this is in turmoil. I realize that they have to announce far in advance, they have to announce tickets, they have to release tickets. All these have to be done on certain guidelines by certain dates. I get all that. But if there are complicating factors, there has to be a degree of acknowledgement up front about them. And I don't know that they were intentionally misleading customers. I think that's a pretty serious charge. But that they could have been a little bit more forthright in acknowledging potential changes, I don't think they did a very good job of that.
Did that rub you guys the wrong way at all?
I feel like it's just one of those things that
you just accept it?
Honestly, in a weird way it is.
Okay.
You could almost... The show has been going on with his, he's one of the coaches, and you could see why they'd want to string along a delusion as long as it'll go. And maybe you're right. I have no idea what was going on behind the scenes. Maybe they were hopeful at some point. Maybe going through this process. It doesn't.
They were hopeful. He wasn't.
Exactly. But maybe from their perspective, you just try to give them the benefit of the doubt. But the other thing is maybe they were just trying to find that replacement fight so they could swap it out and kind of do it all at once. And they did that. Right. And I felt like there wasn't a lot of backlash to that, so that was good. Maybe it was because though Garbrandt has been saying this the whole way, we already accepted the idea that he was out. But I honestly, man, that type of thing these days, it doesn't even rub me the wrong way anymore. It's just at some point you start to you get used to what they're doing. Yeah.
I kind of think the same way. I don't know that you can run your run your business via social media posts, and just because the guy is tweeting stuff out or whatever, I think you still have to, you got to still cross the T's and dot the I's and know and figure out what is going to headline that show. And so I think that it was okay that they waited until they had something positive to announce, something that they can say, this is going to be what we're going to be doing, before they pull the plug on something. I don't know that they're, I wouldn't necessarily say it was dishonest marketing.
There are people who don't follow the sport like we do. There are people who may be fans of Cody Garbrandt who see these emails and tweets and like, Cody Garbrandt's fighting July 8th. Let's go take a family vacation. To me, it does rub me the wrong way that 5 days later, when we knew, Dillashaw did interviews, he said it was 99% out. Just talking to Garbrandt and his team. He said it at the press conference when the press conference was going on, like, I'm not fighting, I don't know. Personally, it rubbed me the wrong way. Let's talk about the fight that they replaced it with, Romero versus Whittaker for the interim middleweight title. Again, going back to our discussion about DJ and Dillashaw, this has been, a problem for them. Interim titles, champions not fighting, going for the quick fix, super fight, if you will, as far as money making is concerned, and the division gets held up. No division has been more affected, at least as of late, than the middleweight division. Do we like the fact that, yes, it feels to me like people are viewing this fight sort of like the Khabib-Ferguson fight for the interim lightweight belt, like this is almost, in their minds, the unofficial title. We don't really care that the champion's not defending right now. We just want to see Romero fight. We want to see Whittaker fight. He looked good. I didn't, as you said, I didn't really see all that much belly aching about this. Do we care that they went this route, A, and B, that it's for an interim belt?
Well, interim belts have always been something that I've disliked. I had a major distaste for those things. But I guess after a while, if you're being served something distasteful enough, eventually your taste buds become desensitized. And I guess I feel that way a little bit about this. I don't recognize an interim belt as having any meaning other than the meaning of fighters getting paid as if they were fighting in a championship fight. And I guess that's not really my interest here. My interest is in the fights that are being made, and it's certainly a good fight. The fact that there's going to be a quote-unquote belt on the line, I don't look at it as a championship fight, but if the UFC is looking at it as a title fight and they're paying those guys accordingly, then whatever.
I mean, they had to get things moving, right? Like, this is one of those situations where Luke Rockhold is on your show on the same day that Anderson Silva's on your show, and they're basically saying, hey, man, one of them saying, like, we should all just veto everything and not take a fight until they figure this out. So you have guys vocally going on and saying this stuff. And at this point, I think that you could look at those two guys, and those are pretty obvious guys to be in this position to do this. So I feel like they got it right. The two momentums, they're both on good winning streaks. Romero, it's crazy to me that he has not lost in the UFC. He's 8-0 in the UFC. Hasn't lost since that Fei Zhao way back in the day in 2011. It's just crazy that we're finally at the point where he's even talking about finally getting a title shot, and he's going to be in this thing. So to me, these are the right guys to be doing it. And I can see to an extent where some fans are like, this is the real one, because until Bisping is actually fighting one of these guys who's the contender, it's always going to wear an asterisk, and especially with Georges St. Pierre, who has not fought in the division and all this stuff. So to me, it made complete sense to put these two guys together, and I was happy to see it.
I mean, I have a jaundiced worldview, you know? I'm generally fairly
Mr.
negative.
Sunshine?
Yes, I generally am a fairly negative person, but it would take a seriously damaged person mentally to not see how awesome this fight is and how appropriate this decision is, how good it is for the division. Mike Bisping spoke to him this week. He was like, I can't even straighten my knee. I know folks think he's ducking Romero. I don't think so. I mean, he's probably trying to get that good payday, but I don't think he's really ducking anybody. But he's not able to fight, and so what are you really going to do? All the things you pointed out. Let's keep the train on the tracks. Let's make sure the machine just moves as it's supposed to, right? This is one way to do it. And then what I really love about Romero versus Whittaker, young versus old, two guys from different parts, not from the, I mean, yes, one of them trains in the United States, and the other one has certainly benefited from best practices generally, but, you know, a Cuban guy, a guy from Oceania, totally different styles and totally different forms of fighting, and just a real contrast there. Neither is necessarily a media dynamo, either for a language barrier or just media participation issue. But that aside, what a fantastic fight. And you could argue, I really believe you could argue, that the winner of that fight is the best middleweight in the world.
Yeah, I love the fight as well. I really love Whittaker's progression and his improvement and his evolution. I mean, what he did to Jacare was incredible. And I don't know if that many people were,
Imagine if he had fought Bisping when they were supposed to.
Oh, yeah.
How different everything might be right now. Yeah.
Yep, he was supposed to fight in 193, that Ronda Rousey card. And so I also like that the winner of this fight, once you have that interim belt, they can't deny you the next shot. So it's almost like you're securing your place at that table. Well, who's been an interim champion?
You're right. That's unfair. They have made ridiculous matchups in the past, but you're right. That is one thing they have not yet. They have yet to mess up the idea of an interim champion getting a real title.
Now there has been a situation where the interim champion has defended the interim belt, and that was Renan Barão, and that's a little weird. And maybe they stuck with Dominic a little too long, and they gave him that benefit of the doubt. But I kind of feel like, okay, so here's the thing though. Wait a second, you may actually be right. Because if Whittaker, let's say Whittaker, Whittaker Romero happens, one of them wins that interim belt, and then they do Bisping GSP. That means the interim champion isn't getting the next title shot. Is that a problem? Or the fact that they're doing this fight, does it have to be that the winner fights Bisping?
I don't have I'll be honest, my colleagues may disagree with me, and people viewing may disagree as well, and that's fine. I don't think this is the one where I really don't know if there's a right answer, because I've been against GSP Bisping for a long time. I mean, I can live with it, but I didn't like it, and they didn't sign a bout agreement. But man, they trotted those guys out there, and they put out a promotional poster. I kind of feel like if you told Michael Bisping you were going to do it, you kind of owe it to him at this point. So I really wouldn't mind if the winner of Whittaker Romero defends it against the winner of Mousasi Rockhold, if in fact they.
So you'd like to see that guy defend and not just wait?
Look, in an ideal scenario, would the division work the way it's supposed to? Yes, but they've already written checks metaphorically. I mean, like you got to own up to that a little bit. So I as much as I hate it, yes, I do think that they should give that Bisping GSP fight.
I was thinking more that they would still do GSP Bisping, but the person whoever wins that fight happening in July just waits out that winner. That's the way I kind of was anticipating. Only in the sense
but they're saying, by the way, they're saying that fight is off, right? Didn't he say that to you?
They are.
Well, sort of. I mean,
I still don't buy that though.
Well, of course, because now they're angling and it seems like to put it back together.
Right.
Both fighters want it.
I mean, would you have a problem with it?
at this point, it's gotten so convoluted that I guess I wouldn't. I mean, for the same reason that Luke's talking about, there's something that they've already taken several steps toward. I do think this though. GSP coming back is a big deal, and there are several options that they could put on the table to benefit. Because really, what is the reason they put this together? They're not doing this to give Michael Bisping, a big payday. They're doing it because they think they want to capitalize on GSP's return. And I think there are several other ways that they could capitalize on his return. That would leave Bisping without a fight, and he would fight the winner of this one. To me, that's the better way to go about managing this weight class. But just the way the wheels have been turning lately in the UFC, I'm sort of setting myself for not being disappointed when it happens.
Here's the difference. Whenever you're doing these super fights and they have to create an interim title after the fact, there's always this grudging reluctance. Well, now we're going to have to do an interim title fight. They've already created the interim title fight.
Right.
It's already there. They've already got it. It gives you a little bit of flexibility at the top, since you already promised these guys something, at least verbally, to go ahead and make good on it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's just, and I've said this 1,000 times now, it's just not fair. And I know fair is just kind of a silly word, but you promised Bisping that shot. He's been a great soldier for the UFC. He's been there for 10 years. I feel for the guy if they try to take it away from him.
But he's also had, think, if he had just beaten Rockhold and now he's got his first shot, and you want to give him a favor. Not that fighting GSP is a favor, but it certainly is a favor financially.
Yes.
Fine. But they already gave him that favor by giving him the rematch that he craved with Dan Henderson.
I know, but that was their idea. It wasn't his idea. He didn't ask for that.
Okay, but,
he took it.
Okay, and I've been buying that argument for a while too, and I still basically buy it. But it was also not their idea, but the idea that UFC supported was DJ. DJ was like, nope. Give me the next real contender.
Fair.
Something to be said for that.
There is something to be said, and that's why I feel like DJ should be applauded and all this. That's why he got into this damn mess. No, that's fair. I mean, I still look. A guy who's been fighting for so long, essentially fighting with one eye. I mean, I feel like he's been through the ringer. I feel for him, and I hate to hear people say worst champion in UFC history. That's crazy to me. I mean, you can't just erase everything the guy did. He's had some great wins. Just recently, Rockhold, Anderson Silva, Talis ladies, these aren't bums. How could he be the worst champion in UFC history because he wants them to stay true to their word? He wants to get the fight that he was promised.
He's the worst champion in UFC history if you're somebody who's only started watching the UFC and maybe he's the lowest ranking champion currently. If you can make that argument, but certainly if you look at UFC history, there have been some champions who have not been at Michael Bisping's level.
Look at the roster right now and pick probably some.
Okay, let me ask you guys about Rory MacDonald. We didn't have a lot of time to talk about him last week, but he has since debuted in Bellator. And what a debut it was. In my opinion, of all the recent free agent signings that Bellator has had, this was the best one. I mean, this was a grand slam for Bellator. Looked amazing, great shape, completely annihilated Paul Daly, was great on the mic afterwards. There's some excitement about his next fight against the welterweight champion. He's talking about fighting for the middleweight belt as well. By the end of the year, you have the middleweight champion.
Can't just jump in line, can he? No,
well,
Bellator is a little different around there.
In a weird way, I feel like Rory MacDonald on his own legitimizes Bellator. In my opinion, he's the best fighter on the roster. The UFC, I think, gambled on him being a shot fighter who's been fighting for a decade, who had the broken nose, the glass chin, whatever you want to say, had his heart snatched out of his body by Robbie Lawler, didn't look like his old self against Wonderboy Thompson. They gambled on him, like other gambles that they made recently, and quite frankly won, being done, and he isn't done. This was a grand slam for Bellator. Do you guys share this enthusiasm?
It's amazing to me. It's still a controversial idea, to your point. Even among experienced UFC executives, rehabilitation of elite fighters is a real possible thing. Now, in every case, no. All the time, no. But I don't know what their calculus was in that boardroom, but I wonder if it was off now, really, truly. I mean, maybe they just didn't want to pay him what he wanted or something else. But I really believe Scott Coker has demonstrated now with Michael Chandler, just in Bellator, forget Strikeforce, just in Bellator with Michael Chandler and now with Rory MacDonald, if the promoter and the fighter work together, and also credit to his coaches who came up with the right game plan and everything was executed perfectly. Everyone did their job. and as a consequence, you saw this magnificent return. I really believe that we need to stop thinking about fighters who are in a bad period, who have shown elite levels, that they can't get back there unless they just, fight the toughest guy next. No.
Chris Weidman.
I've talked about this on my radio show ad nauseum. Taking on Kelvin Gastelum is strategically malpractice. I cannot fathom who thinks that's a good idea. In this particular case, Paul Daly is a good fighter, a very good fighter. But the way in which they match up on the ground made it a manageable task, easy to sell in London.
Yeah.
Genius work by Bellator.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is if he'd went in there and gotten smoked, it would have just been one of these things like, okay, everybody would have, anybody who was on the UFC side on this would have basically been like, well, there you go. Every guy who defects basically gets blown up, because we'd seen it with Benson Henderson in his debut at 170 pounds, but we've seen it with other guys.
And he lost at 155 as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I felt like there was a little bit of, I think, precedent there from the other guys who'd come over. So I wanted to wait and see before I was too much on this bandwagon. But after watching him do that, and just given all of what he brings to Bellator, I mean, it's a slam dunk 100%. They come out looking as good as you could possibly look, and you get a guy who is as vital. And I know that people are like, well, he's not really in his prime if he started fighting at 16, but I'm like, he's still in a prime age. He's 27, man. It's not like he's 33
right.
or something like that. He's 27 years old. He had a Fight of the Year candidate. I mean, it was a Fight of the Year, as far as I know. Like
4 minutes away from winning the belt.
I know, and I'm like, it's like he left Robbie Lawler in pretty bad condition too. You could say that they took a lot out of each other in that fight. You're really basing it on one fight. Then you're saying that the Wonder Boy Thompson fight, he didn't look like himself. He's out of here.
Yeah.
Well, that just got proven really stupid, and I think that's where Bellator. He's from Canada. He can headline Canadian shows. He can be their guy up there who's helping him break through. To me, they came out looking great. I mean, the whole way, this was like one of those types of shows. It actually gave them, too, seeing Rory MacDonald in that cage was kind of cool.
Gave him the rub, right?
It was like the whole thing was
such an established name and
the whole
face.
thing was very cool.
I mean, that's why I said it legitimate. I know that's a crazy statement to make, and it's probably, not 100% accurate.
You're going to get some angry text messages after this.
From who?
There's some sensitive little butterflies over
No. But to me, Rory MacDonald, let's not forget, this guy sold out an arena in Halifax, sold out an arena in Ottawa, almost like on his name alone because he's such a big Canadian star. Can go probably to BC now and fight for the belt and do pretty well. They don't have a lot of guys who can do that. You know what I mean?
He's one of those guys, too, who quietly... He's around long enough, almost like Mousasi in the sense that he's been around a long time, but people only start to get him at some point. Like, you're like, whoa, this guy is, you start to understand him more as he goes, and people start to like him more, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, his momentum grows as a personality. I feel like he's in that space, too, and this kind of just helps him along, obviously, especially with that, coming to take your health and all that stuff.
I thought that it was a slam dunk because of the way the matchmaking occurred on every level. The fact that this fight was held in London was important because Daly, is a name anywhere, but certainly in London there was a lot of excitement in the crowd to see their guy. And here's this guy, the new guy coming in, and the fact that they put him in with Daly, a guy who, he can bang, but once the fight goes horizontal, he has no answers. I mean, zero answers for MacDonald, and it looked like MacDonald ended up, looking like Demi and Maya, down there. He was so much in mastery of Daly down there on the mat that, it even elevated his performance even more. So it was like, between the sight of the fight, the opponent, it was.
He didn't even get hit.
Didn't get hit.
He came out mint condition. It was.
Can I just say this, though? I mean, I'm sorry, Bellator, it's not all rosy. They did botch something really, really badly. The freaking fight was 6 hours, delayed in North America. I mean, here you have a guy that you paid all this money. I mean, it didn't feel the same. I knew what happened.
And as a consequence,
I found a way to not. I found a way to stay away from. I was on social media earlier, so I knew about like the Kongo fight. I knew what happened there, but then I turned off Twitter.
And how about the fact that the Kongo fight was an absolute stinker and they left that on the broadcast?
What is the benefit?
Why did
Yes.
they put him on there anyway? It's like,
Well, that's
you
true.
can go back further.
I mean, they literally could have aired dead air. Just put on Cops again for 15 minutes. I'll watch some yokel get electrocuted with no teeth. Put that back on. Then Augusto Sakai versus Cheick Kongo, literally one of the worst fights I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and it happened
was that
6
possible?
hours prior. And even during the broadcast, when you're watching it, on tape delay here in America, Sean Grandy says, kudos to you if you're actually watching this 6 hours later and sticking around. Like, what the hell?
I was like, kudos to him for because he made it actually pretty entertaining. Those guys
No, they're actually, I give the Bellator crew a lot of credit. Like Anastasia Yankova, they were completely ripping her when she missed weight. Like, they're really telling it like it is.
But one more thing about this Rory thing before we get too off track. Credit to there's another thing they did. Well, not really the matchmaking and the place they put it. I thought, remember Rory, I think if he really wanted to, he could have taken out Daly in the first, but he took his time in the first, got his legs back under him, and the second, just blew through his guard and choked him out. But for me, also, the patience that Bellator showed, giving him the time off to heal his nose, I thought that was a lot.
They announced signing in August.
Right.
They said it all.
Right. They had this guy, and everyone was like, okay, when is he fighting? Not till May.
Yeah.
And he asked fans to wait, but look at the reward. Look at how much now those royalty checks are coming in, and it paid off.
And even in that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fight, it was his nose again, really. I mean, you could actually have an excuse if you wanted to use it of why he looked the way he did.
And so let me ask you guys this. Am I overstating things when I say that Rory's success by itself will now shift the way this whole free agency game is played? I feel like now it's starting. Now you see the UFC say to themselves, wait a second, we can't just let these guys go over there. Like, what if Mousasi goes? What if, I kind of feel like them signing Gokhan Saki, who's, everything says that this is not a UFC signing. 0-1 in his MMA career. Last fight in MMA was in 2004. Kickboxing legend. This is a Scott Coker guy through and through, and they sign him.
That's exactly
I kind of feel like all of a sudden they're saying, wait a second, we can't be as lax as we were letting these guys walk away. Is that putting too much on Rory's performance?
A little bit. I mean, I think if Henderson had gone over there and looked good against Koreshkov,
but he didn't.
Right, but he didn't.
But now Rory did.
But there's Bader there as well. I think if Bader and Davis, we've literally already seen that. So I guess that's not exactly. But what if Larkin goes over there and just absolutely just runs over Lima?
Yeah.
There's another possibility too. I don't know if it starts with Rory, but if you want to look at their free agency acquisition process, this is going to be one of those ones where it takes a jump in the graph overnight. Not the whole thing, but a major catalyst for the next evolution of it.
It doesn't always mean shot fighter when these guys go over there and lose to Bellator. Sometimes it means that Bellator has guys that are existing.
The
in the
Koreshkov
roster.
fight, yes. But then the Pitbull fight for Henderson
That's
was a bad
true.
look.
That's true. But I'm just saying, I feel like we always skew it. Like when the guy goes over there and he doesn't perform well, we're like, well, he's shot. That's why the UFC got rid of him. Sometimes it's just that those Bellator guys have been waiting for these moments to shine, too.
Yeah, Bellator has put themselves in a kind of win-win because if they bring some high-profile UFC guy over, and that guy wins. Now they've got this hotshot former UFC fighter who's shining in their promotion. If that guy comes over and loses, then all of a sudden, hey, our roster is pretty damn good. We can beat those guys, and so they kind of, the more that they allow the UFC to build up the names with their higher profile, and then get the right ones to come over. They're doing good.
It feels like they did cross some kind of threshold with Rory MacDonald, because when you look at a guy like Douglas Lima, for instance, who's going to defend the title, and you think, have people really talked about Douglas? Have we sat around and just always talked about Douglas? No, you haven't. It's just he's a guy who's there. But let's say he beats Lorenz Argan. Suddenly, one of your guys, one of your organic fighters who you've had, gets this big fight, and suddenly that becomes a real fight. I feel like that's all of a sudden he's then lifted up. One of your guys that needs that extra hand.
Yeah, they should go, in my opinion, they should go to BC for the Rory title fight. Put Julia Budd on that card as well. She's the featherweight champion. She's from BC as well. And now you're all of a sudden opening up this Canadian market that I think they've kind of ignored for quite some time.
Canada would love to have a Bellator show. A good one with Rory at the top.
Rory.
That would kill.
With GSP right now inactive, I kind of feel like, I don't think this is a bold statement. He's the best Canadian fighter in the world, right? I mean, he's the best Canadian fighter no matter the organization by far.
I think that's right.
Yeah, and they have him. And that's a pretty nice feather in their cap. By the way, speaking of Mousasi, last week I alluded to the fact that they were, essentially in the end zone, the 70-yard.
Oh, were you that guy? You the guy who carries the ball across the end zone and then drops it right as
no.
across?
I don't know if you were here a couple weeks ago when I said that they were on the 60-yard line, and these guys gave me crap. But it was Canadian football terminology.
Not even the 60-yard line.
Not even Washington Valor.
He went to the.
He's still doing it.
He went to the retreat. Mousasi, and they had a meeting on Friday, and we're hoping to close it. Didn't close it, and then was on UFC Tonight last night, Wednesday.
That was bizarre.
That was so bizarre.
Just you gotta love him though. You know, he goes on their platform and.
How did that pass, standards and practices? To go on state-run television and completely crap on the UFC contract? What is going on? This is like bizarro world that we're living in.
Okay, as a side note, I don't know if someone just messed up there. It's not, look, UFC Tonight is a wonderful program, but it's not usually a place you go to for dissenting opinion, yeah?
Right.
It's just not, it's not what it is.
Don't I know it?
Fair play. Fair play. But my point being is this. There is an argument to be made that Fox Sports generally is asserting their editorial independence around the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that online in ways that you didn't see before. But yeah, to see Mousasi up there being like, yo, if you really want to keep me, shake the cheese, I found that to be part of the continued evolution of Mousasi as this relatively controversial character, but to your point, a guy who over time making a push in the cage with this win streak he's got.
Become more beloved,
and
like
personality
or something like that. Yes. I feel like
the more you push, the more. I mean, look at Iaquinta. Fans are taking to this right now. By the way, I don't mean to burst people's bubbles, but several months ago, I asked Mousasi about his tweets, which started to become a lot more entertaining, and he flat out said he does not do his social media. So I just want to let people know when they get excited about the gifts and whatnot that this is coming from his management, which is fine. But there's a difference between when a guy does it himself and when someone else does it.
It was slightly surprising though, because I felt like, I guess, from my perspective, just kind of, I wasn't really in touch. Maybe you've known more on the inside, but I felt like they were kind of reaching an agreement. I thought that they were getting there.
He did a PR tour for them.
He was in Singapore.
Yes.
He was at the retreat. I just assumed that everything was like glowing, I guess, towards that, getting something going. And then to hear that was the second part of that surprising. It was like, what? So is he going to be in the UFC or what's going to happen?
And now I feel like
when he was on coming on last night, I heard he was going to be on. I actually assumed that they had moved up like to the 80-yard line or something.
Good one. That's a good one. Okay, let's talk about the retreat, which was very much in the news over this past weekend. So all kinds of things coming out of this UFC Athlete Retreat, as they called it. A lot of the fighters, I think, were somewhat excited. And let's tell it like it is. A lot of the big names didn't go. Champions, people who had fights scheduled in the upcoming future didn't go. The UFC paid for all expenses, flights, hotel, all that stuff. And they had this 3-day seminar, if you will, with carnivals and speakers and all kinds of things.
Snoop
Dogg concert. They got to meet Ari Emanuel for the first time, a lot of them. Hear from athletes like Kobe Bryant and Michael Strahan. And it was fascinating for me to watch it all kind of unfold in real time via social media, different tweets, people becoming a little more, I thought, bold with their tweets and what they were saying. I find this topic to be fascinating on many levels. The timing of it, what was discussed, how it was structured. What did you guys make of it? What's the verdict? Because I know we've all kind of talked to people. You've talked to people. You've had people on your show. Like overall, as you walk away, did the UFC, did they have the right intentions? Were they trying to bridge the gap, extend an olive branch? Was it tone deaf? Did they miss the point? Are the fighters not seeing? Like, there's just so many ways that you can break this thing down.
I actually think it's everything everyone says it is, which is to say, if you want to take, I spoke to Leslie Smith yesterday, and you had Al Iaquinta was in your show talking about the Snoop Dogg concert. How much did that cost? Or this new training center and whatever the proper name for it is.
Performance Institute.
Yes, yeah. Come on, please. Okay. I mean, when you were talking about reverse euphemisms, what a joke. All right. But in any case, that cannot be cheap, right? And all these other things, like there's a lot of sentiment out there that a lot of that money could be spent in a lot of different and better ways. And I think that's a really fair and important criticism. So that is certainly one knock on this. Why are you providing these services when there's a general sentiment that everyone feels like they're underpaid, but it has proof maybe relative to their other sporting peers? The other part of me, though, is I do feel like they do want to foster camaraderie. They do want the fighters to feel good about the brand. They do want them to be financially managing their assets in a responsible way. And so I think if you want to take a really positive view, there are ways you can do it. And if you want to take a really negative view, these are not services they need to be providing. There are other ways I think you could do it. So it's really a mix of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you're absolutely right. There were moments of it that I feel like the fighters really enjoyed, and there was camaraderie that came out of it. But there was also a weird bonding that was probably counterintuitive to what it was supposed to be, because I felt like a lot of the bonding was along the lines of, hey, these people are condescending us. These people are treating us as something other than what we are. These people are trying to talk down to us. That's a lot of the kind of sentiment I was getting talking to a couple of the fighters. What the tone-deaf aspect of what was going on with their professionals, going to the Budweiser, the Budweiser guy and everything. And I mean, it seemed like a lot of people were really like, what is this all about?
For those that don't know, what happened with the Budweiser guy
So I don't really truly know 100. I never saw the video or anything,
Sure.
but apparently the guy.
Is there video?
I saw some of the video. I saw some of the video.
So, I mean, apparently he was a little intoxicated, too, and he was
10:30 in the morning on
10:30 in the
Sunday,
morning.
they had this talk about branding
Let
and
he who
sponsorship.
has not been hammered at 10:30 in the morning cast the first time.
And we don't know that for a fact, but the guy was up there
that's what the
holding
consensus was.
a bottle, and some of the fighters were offended by him saying, we want you to be more like Conor McGregor, and you're
After
one
you said be
yourself away.
yourself.
Yes, you're
Be
one
yourself,
knockout
be
away
like
of being.
Conor McGregor.
But how did we learn about this guy? It was from the fighters tweeting about it, right?
And I felt like that was kind of an epitome or epitomized a lot of their experience. I felt like you have a lot of fighters there that are disgruntled anyway. You put them in the same room, and I feel like there was a lot of this going on. Like, we'll get a load of this guy up here.
Yeah.
That's what it seemed like to me. Especially on the things you mentioned where, there's carpets that are laid in that are all about the UFC retreat. They're seeing this stuff. They're seeing these, Michael Strahan's being flown in, and there's Kobe Bryant, and they're giving you these speeches that really have nothing to do with the caliber of where they're at anyway.
Right.
But then you're realizing, these new owners and everything, how much are they paying these guys to come in and speak? And I think it backfired a little bit, and it was a little bit of a slap in the face to a lot of the people in there, because most of those people, like you said, most of them weren't the top tier athletes in attendance. These were the people more in the middle to the bottom.
Yeah.
And I feel like they were probably all like, what is all this?
Right.
And I think they felt like it was condescending.
Yeah, I mean, this whole idea of it being tone deaf, I understand that criticism, but I don't have a problem with them paying Snoop Dogg to do a concert to entertain them. I mean, there's something about them making a statement. When I say them, I mean UFC, the people who run the UFC, saying, we're a major league organization. Back in the day, there was, years ago, I worked for Disney Publishing and for one of their magazines, and every once in a while, we would all get brought into some place to, for some kind of big meeting. They'd have some entertainment. It was kind of a similar thing where they would spend some money on food and entertainment, and then there would also be some meetings where they would kind of try to get us all on the same page regarding the corporate vision and all that kind of stuff. But there's a little difference between a bunch of editors and writers and advertising people and graphic designers coming into a space to talk about the vision for this publishing company, as opposed to a bunch of fighters who may be asked to be sitting 2 rows away from the guy that he's going to be fighting. And it just seemed as though they were trying to treat this as though it was a corporate event, which it was, but not recognizing that these fighters are different kinds of people than the people who they are usually dealing with. And that's kind of, I won't say an indictment, but it's indicative of the UFC's new management not really quite having understanding of who they're dealing with.
Also, they've done fighter summits before.
Yeah.
This was a little bit different. It was a lot of that summit stuff with the workshops, but then there was, the more camaraderie elements about it as well, the Snoop Dogg concert being one of them. And I just feel like they're trying, let's assume that everything they tried to do was in earnest, a good faith effort. Again, financial management, career planning, how to get out your name out there, and social media, all those different workshops that they had, right? And again, that they wanted to put on a concert for them for this bonding experience. It just feels like they're trying to relate to the fighters in a way that would have worked 5 years ago, that is not gonna fully or at all work now. That there's a disconnect there about their relationship to the fighters.
They had to reassure them more. They had to nurture them. That's what they should have been doing. They should have been trying to make it more about nurturing seriously, because it's not to a point where you can just talk professionally right now between two things, because there's such a disconnect between the professionalism. You know what I mean?
And you can see that pop out at different points, whether the Cajun Johnson thing or the Leslie Smith thing. My feeling is, I've said this for a while, the old matchmaking order collapsing a little bit. They have to establish a new relationship with them, and sort of just trying to do the old thing again, or even as a heightened version of itself. I don't know that's totally going to work.
And also the idea that the narrative that came out of it, of certain fighters like Leslie Smith got applauded for having the courage to stand up and ask about union stuff. Well, I mean, in the real world, this kind of stuff gets discussed. If you go to a meeting, when if you're like in a union and you're dealing with management people ask questions. It's the idea that these fighters are so much under the thumb of UFC, the UFC bosses is kind of it's kind of an insult in its own way, and I think that this should be the norm. If a fighter or a manager has a question for the UFC management about the way that that fighter or all fighters in general are being treated, that stuff should be aired out publicly. It shouldn't be some kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe she's asking this kind of question. Yeah. How courageous.
The very last thing about this, the UFC, people who work there, especially under the Fertitta regime, they really believe in the UFC. The UFC, they want to honor the Shield. They want the fighters to honor the Shield too. I don't know that that's the best way to interact with them or to even get them to do that.
You guys mentioned the word disconnect a couple times, and I think that's the perfect word, because WME-IMG does these sort of retreats on an annual basis with its employees, the 9-to-5ers, so to speak. I know no one really works that these days, but you get what I'm saying. Fighters aren't 9-to-5ers. As you mentioned, I thought it was a great point. These people are fighting each other in cages, and they hate each other, and they have personal beefs. Quite frankly, I'm surprised that more incidents like the Cyborg Magana thing didn't happen. And some fighters told me they were surprised at how few security guards were there. There was security, but again, these are fighters, and there's alcohol, and there's things like that, and they're letting things out, and it's a bit of a tense time. And I just feel like there's a disconnect. Like if you're going to bring out Kobe Bryant, a multi-millionaire, Michael Strahan, a multi-millionaire, to talk about investments and things like that, for the most part, these fighters can't relate to that. Now, bring in Mike Tyson, who tells you about making money in the fight game and then losing it all and rehabilitating his image. Now that's someone that I think a fighter can relate to. But Kobe Bryant with his shoe deals and stuff like that.
Also, I would love to know what his speaker's fee was.
Oh yeah, that guy doesn't leave the house for anything less than 6 figures.
Minimum,
right.
Deep 6 figures.
And so, to me, what I gathered was that the real, the young guys and females, the newcomers, the 0-1, 1-0 fighters, the fighters who, 3 months ago were fighting in LFA or some regional. To them, this is a far cry from the regional scene. This is great. You flew me out to Vegas for a weekend to hang out with Ari Emanuel and Dana White, and I get to take a selfie with my boss and see Snoop Dogg and Kobe. This is awesome. Those guys liked it. Those guys thought, wow, my life is about to change. You see from the tweets, they're trying to defend. More power to them. I appreciate the optimism. But then you saw, I think, the mid-tier to the upper-tier guys say, what am I doing here? What is this? I've been here for 5, 6, 7 years, and this is just not the way it is. And this idea of the Performance Institute, to me, is a bit head-scratching, only because, they say that we went to Man City and we went to other football teams and we took the best elements of these training facilities and we're putting it into one, and this is for you, this is for the fighters. Well, what's the difference between the people who play for Man City and the Giants and this team and that team?
They're employees.
Not only that, they play in the city in which they train. Right. The majority of these fighters don't live in Las Vegas. If you want to use this Performance Institute, you have to fly out there, and you have to bring your coaches, you have to bring your team on your own dime. Are a lot of fighters going to do that? Is Joe Blow from New Jersey or Iowa or Chicago going to fly out and use this thing? And then you could say, all right, you could use it on fight week. Well, what, the whole freaking squad is going to show up there? It feels almost a little naive. It's beautiful. It's great. I give them a lot of credit. They didn't have to continue at WME when they bought it. But the whole thing just felt like some sort of fantasy world where it's like, this is the fight game. It's
Imagine.
And you can't. And one last thing, you can't treat these guys as employees and say you want to be professional, you want to be this, that, and then not give them the benefits of being employees, right?
Or something like that, and you open up a gift box, and at the bottom of it, there's a coupon for 50% off of the apparel brand, like what Kat Zingano tweeted out. And I actually talked to her.
Only.
I talked to her, and I have a piece tomorrow about this, but she basically said that there's a moment when you're looking at the coupon like this, and you think, this is what I've worked towards. This is what I've spent my whole life working towards, is to get to this moment where you're at this spot where you get 50% off of an apparel, you know what I mean? And you can understand when you hear something like that, how it slaps them in the face. So you're mentioning the people who are more in the middle to the top. And I think that that's really what happened. On a lot of levels, that coupon was kind of epitomized the whole weekend in a lot of ways.
The Performance Institute sounds like some sort of vain, boy, it makes the UFC sound and look good, doesn't it? Right, but how much functional value does it have in this loose confederation of fighters? Again, I spoke to Leslie Smith yesterday. She's like, it sounds awesome, like all the things they can do there, but
how does it benefit me?
But she goes, I can already do just about all the things I need at home. I don't need it. I don't understand what the point of it is. And so again, it feels like to me like the UFC is still really invested in protecting, polishing, showing, parading the Shield. And the fighters, this is why the older ones like this, they're not going to be involved with the Shield that much longer, right?
Right.
They got 5 years for some of them left, maybe if they're lucky. They need to figure out what's after that, and trying to get them super excited about the UFC when that chapter of their life is, not going to last for very much longer is a semi-waste of time, if not an outright total waste of time.
I agree with every single critique that we've
Case closed.
that we've put out
Yes,
there.
done.
But I will say this: I think the whole thing was worthwhile, if for only one thing, that it provided us with that wonderful video of Tyron Woodley climbing on Demi Maya's back and pretending to choke him out. I mean, here's two guys that are going to step into the cage and try to kill each other.
You love that.
Whenever that, but
that was your big takeaway.
To me, that was to me like that two professionals
Yes.
who can be fierce as hell when they actually compete against each other can have this kind of like.
Well, then it
rapport
was
with each
all
other.
worth it.
You're a big
It
fan.
was- that's it.
He likes when they're best buddies.
I
You
like
love that stuff.
seeing two guys who just like. Okay, we're going to set that aside. We're going to go in there and try.
I was actually a little surprised that Tyron was there, considering some of the issues that he's had.
And
So wait,
Nunes.
yeah, was it
the other
Nunes, Johnson, and Woodley were the only 3?
Yeah.
3.
Interesting.
But and let's also say that Miocic just fought.
Sure.
Jacek just fought, and Aldo's about to fight. So there were some reasons, but
Miocic doing just getting celebrated at the Cleveland
Yeah,
Cavs.
it must be nice to walk to half court and a couple
it is
belts on
nice.
your waist.
It's nice to be showered with praise. No, but his leg was hurting and things like that. It was interesting to see who was there, who was tweeting about it, who was reacting in certain ways. I mean, that's to me like that was social media was such a great gift, because if they didn't have that, we wouldn't really know what was going on, but they were sharing their thoughts in real time. I had someone say to me like, why are you covering the Cyborg incident or the Cajun Johnson incident and not, covering about all the positive stuff? And to me, like the Cyborg incident and the Cajun Johnson incident wasn't a poor reflection on the retreat itself. It didn't reflect that the retreat was disorganized or a bad idea. These are incidents that could have happened anywhere. Like Cyborg could have seen Magana outside of a arena and punched her. I don't think that those were knocks on the retreat itself. The true essence of the retreat, the speakers, the concert, and the fighters just consistently saying like, I just kind of wish that they would have given me that money, and I know that's kind of a short-sighted way of thinking as well, because not everything that a company does should be like, oh, we can either give the money to the fighters or we could invest it on these events. But when you have fighters walking away from these things saying like, gosh, how much did that cost and how much am I making? And
when Mark Coleman the same week, they slept on this.
Oh, yeah.
When Mark Coleman the same week, I think it's from the GoFundMe page that paid for his hip surgery.
Okay.
Is out there celebrating it. I don't think fighters were lost on that. Or maybe it could have been the week before.
Celebrating what?
That he got the hip surgery.
Oh, wow, I missed that.
Yes.
He finally got it.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
He put it on social media. I mean, I think some folks were just like, Jesus, like this.
And that was thanks to fans.
I believe so. I need to double check on this, but he certainly was sending a giant thank you to the world for helping him achieve that great day.
Again, Mark Coleman, I feel like going there to speak.
Exactly.
Right?
Makes sense.
Totally, 1,000%. UFC Hall of Famer, literally,
UFC Hall of Famer. So
Pay him when you paid one of those guys.
Could you imagine?
You could have had like 15
Win-win.
hip surgeries.
But I mean, do they really want to trot out a guy who needs hip surgery and be like, look at your future? They don't want to do that either.
No,
Well,
but there.
those guys, most of those people in that room, their future reality is a lot closer to Coleman's than it is to Schultz's.
Absolutely.
The Tyson one, I feel like, to your point, is a better one because he has regained some level of stability.
I have to say, though, I was surprised Nate Diaz didn't go. I really was.
Really?
No, of course not. Could you imagine the retreat if, like, Nate and Connor show up, John Jones, Cormier? Now we're talking.
With those vape pens?
Yeah.
The room would have smelled like reefer.
A little Nick Diaz here, like, where are those guys? That's what I want to see. All right. Fun, kind of started off on a bit of a rocky
How many
start.
times have you gotten the giggles like that before?
So Casey, our videographer, can attest to this. There have been times, but we haven't been live.
Yeah. I've been with you on this a couple times.
Yes. And I have a weird thing where I just start crying. Listen, we're all human. I hope that it was a humanizing moment. I will say though,
very surreal, I'll
you
say
made
that.
me laugh, and then you have a little bit of like.
I got a booger hanging?
No, you have a little Pepto-Bismol.
Do I really?
I do.
That is awesome.
And so I was focused on it, and then you made the comment to him, and it was
I got
just.
Pepto-Bismol in my beard. That is, if I don't get a sponsorship from this,
Yeah.
truly the world is dead to me.
Quite frankly, I blame Joe back there who didn't count us down. So I had no idea that we were starting. So I'm going to blame everything on him. And hopefully we'll be back next week.
A poor carpenter blames his tools.
That is true. I had a follow-up joke to that, but I'm gonna leave it at that.
I think you outing me as a serial Pepto-Bismol drinker.
I'm trying to get you that sponsor.
Come on.
I'm trying to get you that sponsor. All right.
The correspondence with them on.
Let's get out of here before we do any more damage. Thank you so much for watching. So, by the way, it's a busy weekend coming up in the world of MMA. It's a long weekend, but we've got ONE FC with a great card Friday morning. Angela Lee returning, but also Ben Askren. He's back. That's very exciting. And then Sunday morning on FS1, it's the UFC in Stockholm. It's Alexander Gustafsson versus Glover Teixeira, and also Misha Serkinov against Volkan Ozdemir. Two very important fights in the 205-pound division. So that's Sunday, Memorial Day, Monday, MMA Hour back on Tuesday. All right, we are done. For Luke, Chuck, Jeff, I am Ariel. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the fights.